The scorching African sun hammered down on the dusty streets of Ouagadougou. Children should have been laughing, running, learning in classrooms. But on this particular afternoon, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young leader whose courage had already won the hearts of millions, witnessed something that stopped him cold. A small figure, no older than 7 or 8, was struggling under the weight of heavy red bricks. His thin, fragile body bent under a load meant for grown men, his bare feet dragged across the hot dirt. Every step was a fight against exhaustion, pain, and hunger. Traoré's convoy was passing through the area on its way to an important government meeting. He could have ignored what he saw. He could have stayed inside the comfort of his air-conditioned vehicle. He could have driven past like so many others. But something in the boy's eyes, something in the way his little shoulders trembled, forced Ibrahim to raise his hand and command his driver to stop the car. When the dust settled around the halted convoy and the child lifted his head, his cheeks streaked with sweat and dirt, the real question emerged. What would Ibrahim do? Give him a few coins and continue the journey? Take a photo for social media? Pretend to care and then drive away? Or would he do something no one, not even his closest advisors, could have predicted? Stay with me, because this story will break your heart. What Traoré discovered after following this child carrying bricks revealed a truth so painful, so devastating, it shook an entire nation. And what he did next proved that real leadership is not measured by military rank or political power, but by the courage to look at the suffering of a child and refuse to look away. The afternoon heat was merciless as the president's convoy entered one of Ouagadougou's poorest districts. Through the tinted windows, Ibrahim's eyes scanned the streets, not as a ruler looking down at statistics, but as a man who truly saw his people, their dreams, their struggles, their humanity. He had come to power not through privilege or corruption, but through a genuine love for Burkina Faso and an unshakable sense of justice. Every day brought new challenges, endless meetings, decisions that could affect millions. But this day, destiny placed something far more important in front of him than any meeting on his schedule. That's when he saw the boy. His clothes were torn, stained with dust and dried clay. The stack of bricks on his back looked impossibly heavy for such a small, fragile frame. He couldn't have been older than 8. His arms, thin like twigs, shook violently under the weight. His back was bent in a painful angle. Every step forward was a small victory against gravity. But what struck Ibrahim the hardest wasn't the weight of the bricks. It was the look in the child's eyes that had seen too much. Eyes aged far beyond their years. "Stop the car," Ibrahim said sharply, his voice cutting through the hum of radios and air conditioning. His security chief turned around. "Sir, we're already late for the ministerial meeting, and this area is not secure." Ibrahim's jaw tightened. "I said, stop the car!" The convoy halted. Security officers stepped out instantly, surrounding the vehicle, scanning rooftops and alleys. But Ibrahim saw only the child. The boy froze, staring at the approaching soldiers with fear and confusion. The bricks in his arms seemed even heavier now, his arms trembling violently. Before anyone could advise him otherwise, Ibrahim opened his door and stepped out into the burning sunlight. He removed his military cap, a gesture of respect so unexpected that even his security team paused. As he walked toward the boy, the child's eyes widened. To him, this was the president, the man whose face appeared on news broadcasts and national posters, walking toward a poor child carrying bricks in a forgotten neighborhood. "Little brother," Ibrahim said softly, kneeling so he could meet the boy's eyes. "What is your name?" The child's lips trembled. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. Tears pooled in his eyes, tears of exhaustion, fear, and the belief that maybe he was in trouble. "It's all right," Ibrahim said gently. "You're not in any trouble. I just want to know your name." "Adu," the boy whispered, barely audible. "My name is Amadou." "Amadou, Basis," Ibrahim repeated, the name falling from his lips like a prayer. "These bricks, they're very heavy. Where are you taking them?" Amadou struggled to breathe. "To the construction site, near the market. I carry bricks all day, 20 trips, sometimes 25. Something inside Ibrahim cracked. 20 trips. This child, who should be in school learning math and history, who should be playing football with friends, was carrying bricks nearly as heavy as his body. And why, Ibrahim asked, though he already sensed the painful truth. Amadou's tears spilled over, leaving clean streaks on his dusty cheeks. My father, he died in the gold mines, sir, 3 months ago. My mother is sick. She cannot work. My little sister is hungry. The contractor pays me 500 francs per trip. If I don't work, we don't eat. 500 francs, less than $1. This child was breaking his body, sacrificing his childhood. For less than $1 a trip, Ibrahim placed his hand gently on Amadou's shoulder. A crowd had begun gathering. Some watched with hope, others with doubt. Was this just political theater? Another leader pretending to care for a moment before returning to luxury? But Ibrahim noticed none of them. His focus was entirely on this one child, a symbol of thousands, maybe millions, of African children carrying burdens far too heavy for their small shoulders. Amadou, Ibrahim said, emotion tightening his voice, I need you to show me where you live. I need to meet your mother and your sister. Will you take me there? The boy nodded slowly, and then something extraordinary happened. In front of the entire neighborhood, in front of his own security team, Ibrahim Traoré bent down, lifted the heavy stack of bricks from the boy's trembling arms. Despite being only a child, the boy had carried that heavy container nearly 20 times a day, every single day, for months. The presidential security team walked behind them anxiously. This was not protocol. It was not safe. The head of security spoke urgently into his radio, calling for reinforcements, his eyes scanning the crowd that followed from a respectful distance. But Ibrahim seemed disconnected from all the noise around him. His attention was fixed entirely on the little boy walking ahead of him, who turned back again and again just to make sure the president was still there. That this moment wasn't a dream, Ibrahim's aide tried again to intervene, rushing to keep up. Sir, ministers are waiting. The African Union has called twice. The French ambassador is requesting an emergency meeting. Ibrahim stopped walking. He turned toward his aide, and the warmth usually shining in his eyes was replaced by a fierce intensity that made the young man step back. Listen to me carefully, Ibrahim said in a low, firm voice. Every meeting I skip, every call I ignore, they can all wait. But if I turn my back on this child right now, if I return to my air-conditioned office and forget what I have seen today, then I am not worthy of leading this nation, do you understand? The aide nodded silently. Around them, the crowd murmured. Some understood the gravity of the moment. Others whispered with doubt. He's only doing this for the cameras, someone muttered. Tomorrow he will forget. They always forget. Suddenly an elderly woman stepped forward, her voice trembling with both hope and bitterness. Mr. President, my grandson carries 25-kilogram water cans to a construction site 10 times a day. He is only 9. Will you help him too? Will you help all of them? Ibrahim turned to her. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Behind her stood other mothers, other grandmothers, each carrying stories of children who worked instead of studied, who suffered instead of played, who grew old before they ever had the chance to be young. What is your grandson's name? Ibrahim asked. She blinked in surprise. Usman, his name is Usman. I will remember Usman, Ibrahim said firmly. I will remember them all. From the crowd came a rough, angry voice. Words. Politicians give us words. The French gave us words. Leaders before you gave us words. What we need is not talk. We need change. The tension rose instantly. The security team shifted their hands toward their weapons. But Ibrahim raised his hand, stopping them. He walked toward the man who had spoken, meeting his furious eyes without flinching. You're right, Ibrahim said calmly. Words mean nothing without action. So watch me. Watch what I do next. Hold me accountable. And if I fail, call me out. That is your right. That is your duty. The crowd fell silent. Stunned leaders did not speak this way. Leaders did not admit weakness. Leaders did not invite criticism. But Ibrahim Traoré was not like other leaders. They continued walking until Amadou led him to a structure that barely qualified as a house, a patchwork of metal sheets, old wooden boards, and torn plastic tied together by rope and hope. Through a gap in the wall, Ibrahim saw a woman lying weakly on a thin mat, shaking with fever. Beside her sat a tiny girl, maybe 4 years old, her stomach swollen from hunger, her eyes large and terrified. "Mama," Amadou whispered as he stepped inside. "Mama, the president is here." The woman tried to sit up, panic rushing into her fever-clouded eyes. The president? No, Amadou, why? We have nothing to offer. He cannot see us like this." Ibrahim ducked under the low entrance and stepped into the cramped, suffocating room. It was barely the size of a small bedroom, yet it held an entire family. No running water, no electricity, no furniture except a few plastic containers and a sleeping mat. The air was thick with heat and the smell of illness. "I'm sorry, sir," the woman whispered, tears rolling down her thin cheeks. "Forgive our poverty. Forgive us. We have nothing." Ibrahim felt his throat tighten. He knelt beside her. "My sister," he said gently, "there is nothing to forgive. Your poverty is not your shame. The shame belongs to a system that allowed this. The shame belongs to those of us in power who have not done enough." Outside, the crowd pressed closer. Some climbed nearby structures to see inside. Ibrahim's aide stood by the door, his phone vibrating nonstop. Ministers impatient, ambassadors demanding answers, schedules completely destroyed. And inside that tiny collapsing shelter, as Ibrahim looked into the eyes of Amadou's sick mother and his starving little sister, he made a decision. One that would cost him political capital, anger bureaucrats, and provoke criticism from the international community. A decision many would call reckless, impulsive. But to him, it was the only decision a leader with a conscience could make. In that cramped, suffocating shelter, Ibrahim Traoré rose to his feet. For a long moment he stood silently, his jaw tightening, his hands clenched at his sides. Everyone watched him, waiting, because whatever he said next would define everything. Amadou looked up at him with confused hope. His mother tried to sit up again, attempting to show dignity in front of a leader she had never imagined meeting. The little girl clutched a dirty cloth doll, her frightened eyes far too large for her thin face. Then Ibrahim spoke. "Call the military hospital. I want an ambulance here in 10 minutes, he ordered. "This woman needs treatment immediately. And call the presidential residence. Prepare rooms for this family. They will stay there until their situation is stabilized." His security chief stared at him, stunned. "Sir, the presidential residence? But protocol, I don't care about protocol." Ibrahim cut him off sharply, his voice burning with righteous anger. "I don't care about procedures. This woman is dying. Her children are starving. We have the power to help them right now. And if we choose bureaucracy instead, then what kind of men are we? What kind of leader am I?" He turned to the mother. "What is your name, my sister?" "Fatih," she whispered weakly. "My name is Fatih." "Fatih," Ibrahim said gently, "I'm taking you to the hospital. The best doctors will treat you. Your children will have food, shelter, and safety. And you," he looked at Amadou, whose tears ran freely now, "you will never carry bricks again. Do you hear me? Never. You will go to school. You will be a child." But sir," Fatih whispered shakily, "we cannot pay. We have no money. The hospital will treat you because I am ordering it," Ibrahim said firmly, "and money is not your worry. The nation has funds. What it lacked was the will to spend them on the people who truly need help." Outside, someone began to cry. Then another voice joined, then more, spreading through the crowd like a wave. Some still doubted. "We'll see if he keeps his word," a man murmured. But many others already felt something changing, something real. Ibrahim stepped out of the hut, and instantly the crowd fell silent. "Listen to me," he said, his voice echoing through the dusty air. "What happened here today is not charity. This is justice. This is what should have happened long ago. These are our children. This is our nation. Their suffering is our failure." He paused, letting those words sink into every heart. "I came to power promising change, but I know many of you have heard promises before, bitins. So let me be clear, I am not making a promise. I am making a commitment. Starting today, we are launching an emergency national program. No child in Burkina Faso will be forced to work in dangerous conditions again. Every child will have access to education. Every family will have access to healthcare. Will it be easy? No. Will it happen overnight? No. Will there be obstacles and opposition? Absolutely. But will we do it anyway? Yes, because that is what leadership means. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some crying openly, some still watching with cautious hope. The ambulance arrived, sirens piercing the silence. Medical workers rushed into the hut and emerged minutes later carrying Fatih on a stretcher. An IV already in her arm, Amadou and his little sister climbed in beside her, their faces stunned, a mix of fear and hope. Before the doors closed, Amadou looked back at Ibrahim. In that look was everything: gratitude, disbelief, a silent question. Is this real? Ibrahim nodded once, a silent promise. Yes, this is real, but he wasn't finished. He turned to his aide. I want every ministry to conduct an immediate count of children in their sectors. I want a report on my desk in 1 week, and I want teams visiting every neighborhood like this one. I want to know how many Amadous, how many Fadis, how many children are breaking their bodies to survive. But sir, the cost? The aide began nervously. The cost of ignoring them is higher, Ibrahim interrupted. We spend millions on defense, on administration, on ceremonies. We can spend it on our children instead, adjust the budget, cut waste, find the money. That is an order. The crowd watched in disbelief as Ibrahim personally helped load the family's few belongings into one of the vehicles. He didn't assign it to an assistant. He did it himself, his uniform covered in dust, his hands touching the worn possessions of the poor. A small gesture, but powerful symbols matter. Actions speak, and as people watch their president, their commander, kneeling in the dirt to help a struggling family, something deep awakened inside them. Hope, that dangerous, beautiful thing, began to bloom again. As the convoy prepared to leave, the elderly grandmother who had challenged him earlier stepped forward. She looked straight into Ibrahim's eyes. We will watch you, she said quietly. We will remember. Do not disappoint us. Hold me accountable, Ibrahim replied. I mean it. When he finally drove away, the crowd stood speechless, because their world had just shifted, and what happened next would ripple far beyond this one child, one family, one neighborhood. It would touch the soul of an entire nation. By nightfall, the story had spread like wildfire across Burkina Faso. Radio stations repeated it. TV channels discussed it. Social media exploded with videos of their president carrying bricks, kneeling beside the poor, making commitments not from a podium, but from the dusty streets of a forgotten community. International media picked it up next. Al Jazeera aired a segment, BBC Africa reported it. News outlets from Paris to New York debated the meaning of this extraordinary event. People across Africa and beyond began discussing the young leader who had stopped his entire convoy. Just for a child, some praised him as a symbol of authentic leadership. Others, especially Western media trapped in old colonial mindsets, dismissed it as a publicity stunt, uncomfortable with the image of an African leader showing genuine compassion and breaking all their low expectations. But Ibrahim didn't care about international media. His focus was on what came next for Burkina Faso. Within 48 hours, Fatima had been diagnosed with tuberculosis and immediately placed under treatment. Doctors said she would have died within weeks if no one had intervened. Amadou and his sister were enrolled in a prestigious school, fees paid, uniforms provided, their futures suddenly full of possibilities. When photos of Amadou appeared online, standing proudly in his uniform, holding his first school books, the entire nation shed tears of joy. But the story did not end there. Ibrahim's orders set in motion a chain of actions that could not be stopped. Government teams spread across Ouagadougou and beyond, documenting cases of child labor. The census revealed a shocking reality. Tens of thousands of children, some as young as 5, working in construction, mines, farms, and domestic service. The numbers were horrifying, but now they were undeniable. A week after meeting Amadou, Ibrahim appeared on national television. Nearly every citizen who could reach a TV or radio tuned in. My people, he began, his voice firm, heavy with emotion. A week ago, I met a little boy named Amadou. He was carrying bricks almost as heavy as himself. Today, Amadou is in school. His mother is recovering in the hospital. His sister is healthy and smiling. But here is the truth that keeps me awake at night. There are 50,000 more Amadous. He paused, letting the weight of the number fall upon the nation. 50,000, not a statistic. 50,000 real children, with names, dreams, and potential crushed by poverty. Today, he continued, I announce the Child Protection Initiative effective immediately. Child labor in all dangerous sectors is banned. We are creating a national fund to support families who depended on their children's income so their kids can attend school instead of working. We will build more schools, train more teachers, provide free meals, and hold every employer accountable. If you exploit children, you will face prosecution. The reaction shook the country. Parents cried with relief. Children who only knew work suddenly saw the possibility of a real childhood. Communities came together like never before, inspired by the courage of their leader. But opposition rose too. Rich businessmen complained about losing cheap labor. International companies, who had quietly profited from informal child labor, threatened to leave. Corrupt politicians grumbled that Ibrahim was damaging the economy. Ibrahim's response was unwavering. At a meeting with resistant business owners, he stood up, slammed his hand on the table, and declared, "If your business model depends on the suffering of children, then your company does not deserve to exist in my country. Adapt or leave." 6 months after meeting Amadou, the results were undeniable. School enrollment rose by 37%. Reported cases of child labor dropped dramatically. Fatima fully recovered and began working as a community health advocate. Her daughter became a helper for other struggling mothers. And Amadou, once exhausted and malnourished, was now reading at his grade level, dreaming of becoming a doctor. On the anniversary of that life-changing day, Ibrahim returned to the same neighborhood. The transformation was breathtaking. Dusty roads had been partially paved. A new community school stood proudly. Clean water pumps were installed. But the greatest change was in the children. They ran, laughed, and played, free from the heavy weight once forced onto their small shoulders. Amadou, now taller and healthier, sprinted towards him. "Mr. President, my teacher says I got the highest score in mathematics." Ibrahim embraced him as cameras captured the moment. 2 lives changed forever by a single act of compassion. Later, speaking to journalists, Ibrahim reflected, "When I saw that child carrying bricks, I had a choice. I could have driven past him. I could have told someone else to handle it later, but I stopped. And that simple act, stopping, seeing, caring, changed everything. Not just for him, for me, and I hope for our nation." He paused, eyes distant, remembering that scorching afternoon. Leadership is not about military power or brilliant policies. Leadership is seeing a suffering person and having the courage to act. Because if you will not stop for one child, you will never help a million. The real power, he said softly, is love turned into action. Real power is a leader kneeling beside a child in the dust and saying, "You will not carry this alone." If you love this story, he concluded, subscribe for more inspiring stories of Ibrahim Traoré. Share this video so others can feel the power of compassion and leadership. Somewhere in the world right now, a child is carrying a burden too heavy for their small shoulders, and they need someone to stop, to see, to care.